Hello, my name is Jim Bratton. Selective demolition is considered high risk in construction work and exposes the worker to a wide range of potentially very hazardous environments. Safety is critically important during all renovation and demolition operations.
The primary causes of accidents in heavy demolition work are premature collapse of buildings and structures and falls from workplaces and access routes. Selective demolition has many of the same hazards, but many times in more confined areas. And in most cases, selective demo is performed by hand or using smaller equipment and hand tools, putting workers directly in the line of fire. Demolition workers may also be exposed to a range of hazardous substances which may have formed part of or have been present in the structure. Contaminants commonly found in old buildings may include lead, asbestos, silica, PCBs, mercury, and animal and/or bird feces. In addition, biohazards may be present as a result of prior human occupancy. These include contaminated clothing, trash, or needles or other sharps that have not been disposed of properly. These hazards may not be readily noticeable, so it's important to anticipate their presence. Toxic mold, too, may grow in old buildings, especially in areas where excessive moisture accumulates indoors. Still, other hazards associated with demolition include falling structures or fragments, construction equipment working in enclosed areas creating hazardous atmospheres or working on floors or structures that will not support their weight, cutting torches, building components that are in tension or compression, increasing the potential for catastrophic failure, fire, electrical contacts, and stored flammable and/or toxic materials.
Before the start of any demolition project, it's important to make careful preparations to ensure the safety of the workers on the job and of other individuals within the vicinity of the demolition site. Planning for a selective demolition project is as important as planning for those bigger jobs we're all familiar with, and it's a critical step in doing the work. Let's take a closer look at demolition hazards and steps you can take to help protect yourself from serious injury or even death while on the job.
Prior to starting any demolition operations, conduct an engineering survey of the structure to determine the condition of the framing, floors, and walls, and the possibility of an unplanned collapse of any portion of the structure. This survey should be conducted by a qualified individual. This is true in selective demo as well, even if you're just moving a few walls. Remember that in selective demo, you're still leaving parts of the structure in place. This can increase the hazard. Determine if any type of hazardous chemicals, gases, explosives, flammable materials or similarly dangerous substances have been used in any pipes, tanks, or other equipment on the property. These may include lead paint, asbestos, or mold. When the presence of any such substance is apparent or suspected, test and remove or abate the substance to eliminate the hazard if necessary before demolition is started. When there is a hazard from fragmentation of glass, remove that hazard. Where there's dangers of employees falling through wall openings, protect the opening to a height of 42 inches. Cover all floor openings not used as material drops with material substantial enough to support twice the weight of the load which may be imposed. Remember that these loads may include equipment such as scissor lifts, skid steer loaders, and in some cases, excavators. Secure and label the material to prevent accidental movement. Protect employee entrances to multi-story structures being demolished by sidewalk sheds or canopies. Be sure to provide protection from the face of the building for a minimum of 8 feet. When designing or installing these systems, be sure to consider local ordinances. Also, consider the potential for flying or bouncing objects. You may need to significantly increase the protected area below. In accordance with structural requirements, Brace or shore up the walls and floors of structures which have been damaged by fire, flood, explosion, or other causes, and which employees must enter. Do not permit employees to work where structural collapse hazards exist until those hazards are corrected by shoring, bracing, or other effective means. Inspect all stairs, passageways, and ladders. Use only those stairways, passageways, and ladders specifically designed as a means of access. Illuminate all stairways and passageways. Make sure that lighting systems do not create a tripping or electrical hazard, especially in stairways. Remove all roof cornices and other ornamental stonework prior to pulling walls down. Begin demolition of exterior walls and floors at the top of the structure and proceed downward. Do not cut or remove structural or load-supporting members on any floor until all stories above that floor have been removed. Keep in mind that nearly every demolition project runs the risk of unexpected structure collapse. Be on the lookout for tension buildup on any structural member that is being cut. Look for cracks, spalls, or deformation of walls or floors. If you detect any of these warning signs, stop work immediately. Select, wear, and use personal protective equipment appropriate for the task. Personal protective equipment plays a very important role in protecting the safety of demolition workers. When working around rubble, wear boots with puncture-resistant soles and steel toes to avoid cuts and punctures from nails and other sharp objects. When working at heights of more than 6 feet off the ground without a guardrail, wear a personal fall arrest system. The PFAS should include a properly fitted harness, the appropriate lanyard or retractable, and an adequate anchorage point. Remember that anything you anchor to must be capable of supporting at least 5,000 pounds. When installing an anchorage, imagine that a pickup truck is hanging from that point. That's the kind of support you'll need. Keep in mind that the structural capacity can change as demolition proceeds. If you have any questions, be sure to consult your supervisor. To protect hands, wear the appropriate gloves for the task. These may include cloth gloves for minor work, or leather or Kevlar gloves when working around metal or sharp edges. Always wear a hard hat on the site. Wear the appropriate safety glasses, goggles, and face shield based on the type of hazard present. Remember that during demolition operations, large chunks of materials could strike your face. A face shield is strongly recommended. Wear hearing protection, especially earplugs or earmuffs when noise levels are high. Equipment such as compressors and jackhammers frequently create noise in excess of maximum permissible levels. Long-term exposure to excessive noise may cause permanent hearing loss. A good rule of thumb is to wear hearing protection when you must raise your voice to be heard by another worker only a few feet away. Wear respiratory protection when there is risk of exposure to hazardous dust or fumes. Exposure to excessive dust containing lead, asbestos, or silica, materials commonly found in old structures, can cause serious illness. Use respiratory protection that is appropriate for the type of hazard present. For example, a dust mask will not protect against asbestos, and a respirator rated for asbestos or lead will not protect against hazardous vapors. Make sure you follow your company's respiratory protection program requirements. Remember, you must be medically certified to wear a respirator. Maintain your respirator on a daily basis. This is especially important to ensure adequate protection. Follow manufacturer's requirements for cleaning. Never leave your respirator in a contaminated area. Inspect all personal protective equipment before use. Discard or replace any damaged or defective PPE. Take precautions when entering confined spaces, such as basements, tanks, and excavations. Hazards may include oxygen deficiency and/or the presence of toxic or flammable gases. To help ensure safety, Test atmospheres to determine that levels are safe before entering these areas. Wear personal protective equipment as necessary. Remember that a respirator will not protect you in an oxygen-deficient atmosphere. Be certain that you know and understand your company's confined space entry requirements. Enter confined spaces only if you have been properly trained to do so. Finally, due to the higher potential for collapse or other hazards on the job, review your demolition plans with local emergency response personnel. They'll be better prepared to respond if they have more information, and they'll appreciate an opportunity to walk the site with you to coordinate any anticipated response.
One of the most important elements of the pre-job planning on demolition projects is the location of all utility services. Accidental contact with active utilities can lead to electrocution, explosions, or a disruption of water and sanitary sewer systems. To help prevent these types of accidents, take these precautions.
Make sure all electric, gas, water, steam, sewer, and other service lines are shut off, capped, or otherwise controlled at or outside the building before starting demolition work. In each case, notify in advance any utility company that is involved and obtain its approval. If it is necessary to maintain any power, water, or other utilities during demolition, temporarily relocate and protect these lines as necessary. Inform all workers of the location of any existing or relocated utility service. Determine the location of all overhead power sources, as these can be especially hazardous during machine demolition. Follow all applicable lockout-tagout requirements for systems that need to be de-energized as demolition activities progress. Be sure to test all power lines prior to removal. Don't assume lines are dead because the building has been abandoned.
Hot work, welding, cutting, brazing, or grinding during demolition introduces significant fire hazards. In addition, there is a risk of exposure to hazardous substances such as fumes. Because of these risks, the contractor should obtain a hot work permit prior to beginning demolition operations. This permit outlines a site-specific plan for safety during and after hot work.
Identify building materials that will be welded, cut, or burned that may contain lead, such as painted surfaces and pipes. Test materials and provide exposure controls as necessary. Make sure pipes and other vessels are purged of contaminants and hazardous materials. Provide natural exhaust or forced ventilation to control exposure to metal fumes and other contaminants being generated, such as generator exhaust. Do not perform hot work where flammable, combustible, corrosive, or toxic substances are being used, stored, or otherwise present. Remove these materials or substances from the area before performing hot work. Make sure that fire extinguishers and extinguishing agents are available in the immediate area. Wear appropriate eye protection. Face shields with safety glasses are generally better for torch work than safety glasses, as they offer more protection to the face. When selecting face protection, make sure your lenses are the proper shade to protect your eyes against the hazard. Common safety glasses are not typically suitable for torch cutting, for example. Finally, maintain a fire watch during all hot work until materials have cooled. OSHA requires a fire watch to remain for 30 minutes after the cessation of hot work activities, but it's good to plan to stay longer than that, especially if you're working in an occupied building.
Debris removal is a necessary phase of demolition. It can also be a dangerous phase. The hazard is the risk of workers and pedestrians being struck by falling objects. Falling objects can cause cuts, lacerations, and puncture wounds, among other injuries. Some injuries can be serious and may even cause death. When working at heights, use safe work practices to protect workers below as well as the public.
When using chutes to drop demolition materials to the ground, make sure chutes are entirely enclosed and that there is a substantial gate at the discharge end. Protect chute openings by a substantial guardrail, approximately 42 inches above the floor or any other surface on which workers stand to dump the material. Be sure to follow proper tie-off procedures when removing guardrails for access to chutes. Replace rails when work is complete. Solidly cover any space between the chute and the edge of the openings in the floors through which it passes. Erect barriers at least 6 feet around the perimeter of the chute openings. Make sure floor openings used for material disposal are not more than 25% of the total floor area. Post signs warning of the hazard of falling materials at each side of the debris opening at each floor. When using mechanical equipment or a wheelbarrow to dump material, install a safety-attached tow bar or bumper not less than 4 inches thick and 6 inches high at each chute opening. When debris is dropped through holes in the floor without the use of chutes, enclose the area where the material is dropped with barricades not less than 42 inches high and at least 6 feet back from the projected edge of the opening. Be sure that the barricades are effective in keeping people out of the area. Using caution tape probably isn't the best method. Do not drop material to any point lying outside the exterior walls of the structure, unless the area is effectively protected. Do not remove debris in lower areas until debris handling ceases on the floor above. Throughout the progress of a demolition project, keep work areas clean and a pathway cleared for equipment and trucks that need site access. If you are working on the ground, stay clear of moving equipment. To help ensure safety, wear high visibility clothing such as highway work vest in areas where equipment is operating.
There are a number of significant hazards present in construction, renovation, and demolition work which may affect both site personnel and the public. Even minor demolition can present a significant risk to the public, especially where the work is carried out in public or occupied areas. Follow these safety tips to help prevent accidents.
Take precautions to restrict access to the work area. Clearly mark the demolition area to ensure that only authorized personnel are allowed within restricted areas. If necessary, install a physical barrier to prevent unauthorized access. If required, schedule work at times of least risk. Clear debris from areas to which the public may have access, or provide a barrier to isolate the debris. Finally, make sure areas surrounding the area have been protected from hazards that exist from fragmentation of glass or falling building materials.
Demolition is considered high-risk construction work. Demolition operations involve many of the hazards associated with construction, as well as additional hazards due to unknown factors. To counter these unknowns, make sure you are aware of all potential hazards and safety precautions necessary to protect yourself from these hazards.
Prior to demolition, make sure a qualified individual conducts an engineering survey to determine the condition of the framing, floors, and walls, and the possibility of unplanned collapse of any portion of the structure. Take steps to abate or remove all environmental hazards before employees begin demolition work. Make sure all gas, water, steam, sewer, or other services are shut off, capped, or otherwise controlled before the start of demolition. Test these lines when you encounter them to ensure they have been properly disconnected and de-energized. Brace or shore up the walls and floors of structures which have been damaged by fire. flood, explosion, or other cause, and which employees must enter. Begin demolition of exterior walls and floors at the top of the structure, and proceed downward. Be careful when removing debris. When possible, use enclosed chutes with gates on the discharge end to drop demolition material to the ground or into debris containers. Do not remove debris in lower areas until debris handling ceases on the floor above. Wear personal protective equipment as needed. Always wear a hard hat, and be especially aware of potential fall hazards. Erect fences, barricades, guardrails, and warning signs to protect both workers and the public. Make sure there is a frequent inspection and maintenance program for these protective devices. When working on any demolition site, remember that conditions can change very quickly. If you have doubts about safety, stop work and evaluate the area. Report your concerns to your supervisor. Review your demolition plans with local emergency response personnel. Coordinate any potential response in advance. It's a great idea to post hot work permits and location maps on the job board as well, so that first responders know where to focus their attention in the event of a fire.
Selective demolition can pose unique hazards to both personnel working on the job, occupants of the building, and the public. In addition to your skill and your training, you'll need a sharp eye for safety. Make sure you're aware of potential hazards, both known and unknown, and be prepared to protect yourself in case of exposure. Remember, safety is part of your job. Do your job well, and you'll help ensure a safe and effective work site.